What is the most extreme example of helicopter parenting that you have ever witnessed? My sister is an RA dorm supervisor at a university and was called by the parent of one of her residents because their room was too cold. I assume the resident was just complaining to her mom, "I'm always cold" or something. But get it together, people. I was a senior RA last year. I enjoyed dealing with parents. Your son/daughter can talk to me, but I can't talk to you. Have a nice day. She wouldn't let her kid turn on Street Pass on his 3DS because apparently that's how child predators catch kids, despite the fact that the online interaction is limited to receiving a bad 3D model and single censored sentence. Also, she told my parents that they were idiots for letting me pursue a degree in language, which was pretty awkward considering my dad got his PhD in French. My ex-girlfriend. When we first started dating, her mom would call and text her every 15 minutes to see what we were doing. If she didn't answer immediately, she'd text me to see what we were doing. We went swimming once and she had to leave the pool every 10 minutes to text her mom. Her parents were almost inconsolably crying the week leading up to her 18th birthday. Her mom had told me she didn't plan on letting her move out until her late 20s, and when she did move out she'd have to call every day and visit her 5 times a week. My GF had been bullied severely in high school and her parents were more than happy to let her drop out so she could be at home more. When I encouraged her to get her GED and helped her study, her parents were upset because getting her GED meant she might be able to go to college and move out. She did pass her GED. Her parents cleaned up after her, made all her meals, and religiously tracked her money even after she turned 18. They made sure she couldn't do basic household tasks like laundry so that she couldn't move out. Once at my house we were watching a movie and neither had our phone on us. Her mom showed up at my house to check on us. They even monitored her food. She'd get her steak well done and I once had her try it medium rare to see if she liked it. She did, but her parents scolded her for it. I ended things with her because although I loved her, I couldn't handle her parents and just couldn't ever see myself married to her in the future with parents like that. Parents coming to do their kids' laundry at college. The kid will be sitting in the lounge area and mommy will be hard at work in the laundry room. You are 19. Learn to wash your own socks. My university's subreddit had a future student's parent posting questions about the college, campus, and dorms, etc. The real student, coming to school next year, made a post calling the parent out for being a helicopter. Those usernames: Row. I had to move back in with my parents my last year of college because of student teaching, even though I was teaching 40+ hours per week. For free, and working as much as I could on weekends. I could barely afford basic bills. They gave me a curfew of like 10 PM and were awful to my boyfriend. If I wanted to stay at his place I had to lie and say I was staying at a friend's. Move forward a year and we were engaged to be married. They kept going on and on about how awful he was. Then a week before the wedding she tried to have the talk with me. I told her it really wasn't any of her business. She had a conniption about that among other things and claimed I had ruined her big day. I wish I could say that was the end, but after the birth of my first child she all but kidnapped me and dragged me off to her home 8 hours away claiming she was helping take care of me. She then spent the week suggesting that I leave my husband and divorce him and move back in with them. Another kid later and yeah, we don't talk anymore. I'm moving to Japan in a month and no one on her side of the family knows because they all acted like that or worse. I knew a girl in college whose mother would frequently drive 11 hours to the campus to clean her dorm for her. I remember having a conversation with the daughter where she mentioned she's never held an actual job before. I raised my eyebrows and said something like, "Wow, really? Not even at McDonald's or something like that?" And her mom got defensive with me and said, "She's only 19. Her mom would build her up like she was gonna do great things after college and it carried into the girl's ego that she was special. But she didn't know how to do the bare minimum and was still playing with children's toys at 20 years old. They're called action figures." Went to college with a young lady whose parents immigrated from India, and every day I would tell her she's allowed to do whatever the heck she wants in this country. Her parents never let her do anything, and even punished her for being late getting home from work. We work in restaurants. Second year, I went from do what you want to frick them. They are controlling and abusive. As a child of Indian parents, thank you. Took me 10 years of my life to learn how to not fear everything. My college English professor told me this story about one of his students. He had this kid in class who seemed to be really passionate about English, but by the end of the first week the kid stopped coming to class. Soon after, he got a call from the kid's parents. Apparently they made their son drop out because they did not want him reading fiction books. The only books he was allowed to read were non-fiction and the Bible. Now I go to a small Christian university, so the craziest book we were reading was Faust by Goethe. All the other books were stuff like the Iliad, Othello, and My Antonia. I couldn't believe these parents still had control over their son like that in college. I just feel horrible for the kid because it seemed like he really wanted to learn. Guys, let's get nuts and read Faust. No, it's the gateway drug to Paradise Lost. My brother was injured pretty badly while training in Lebanon. Israeli army, the base commander, equivalent to a captain in the US Army, refused to send him to a hospital because he was partially to blame for the accident and asked the camp nurse to take care of him. The nurse, after pumping my brother up on morphine, contacted my mom, who was a military police colonel at the time, proceeded to commandeer a chopper, fly up to the base, tear the commander a new butthole and evac my brother out. I mean, she literally took a helicopter. I don't think it gets more helicopter parent than that. To be fair, she's a good mom and never really tried to control us too much. If crap gets serious though, she'll happily murder anyone who threatens her family. I have a couple of stories. One family member is super controlling of her son. The typical don't do this, don't do that at all hours of the day tends to speak for him. Anytime he says something legitimately funny that isn't offensive, she yells at him for making too much noise. Got him started in karate, then started bullying him into quitting when she found out they have to spar. Mind you, this is super controlled, light contact sparring. Accidents do happen, but are few and far between. Now he plays every other sport under the sun. She mostly has him involved basketball and travel team soccer, two sports with much higher injury rates than most martial arts. To the parent of one of my high school band students, this parent was on my butt over every little thing. They thought I didn't give her kid the credit they deserved. There was an email the next day. Thought I favored another student, who was a better, more talented, and more coachable player. There was another complaint. You name it. I heard it from this parent. We had a 3-day trip planned, and I let the kids sign up for their ideal rooming situations, assuming you followed the rule of filling an entire room of 6 people to a room at once. This kid signed up for a room with one other person, thinking they would get it to themselves. So, as stated in the rules of the trip, I split them up to fill up 2 other rooms that had 5 each. Guess what? There was another email, this time requesting a meeting with an administrator. I'm fairly certain this kid will be nearly non-functional without their parents coddling them every step of the way through college. This is a story about a guy I grew up with. I remember him as the whiny kid who cried a lot. I only know this story because our moms are friends. Anyway, he was still living at home at 23 and hadn't been out on his own yet. He decided to go visit his sister for a few days. I think his parents had brought up the idea in an effort to nudge him out of the nest. I'm not sure exactly how far away his sister lived, but he only made it to Boise, which is about a 5-hour drive from our hometown. Once he got to Boise, he called his mom and dad crying about how he was homesick and tired of driving. His parents then decided to drive up together so that they could pick him up and drive his car home for him. He slept in the backseat while he waited for them. A 5-freaking-hour drive to rescue their poor little boy. At 23 years old, people, don't helicopter parent your kids, they'll never grow up. A girl I've known since 1st grade was followed by her mom her whole school career. Her mom became a security guard at each school this girl attended. All 12 years. It was very weird. She could never date a guy, because her mother would stalk and intimidate them. She mostly hung out with closeted gay guys. The girl ended up having a romantic relationship with her band teacher, 20+ years her senior in her junior year of high school. They eventually got married and had a kid. They're still together. A girl I know isn't allowed to have gum or soda until she is 18. She was not allowed to watch anything PG-13 other than Star Wars and Star Trek until she is 18. No video games, 1 TV show per week. Basically all she is allowed to do in her free time is read, study, and do homework. When a kid goes to college 6 hours away and calls home to ask what proper protocol for catching a taxi, pre-Uber, is, you tell them call up, tell them where you're going, make sure you've got enough to pay, get out, have a good day. You do not catch a flight to your son's college in Southern California, go to the school and catch a taxi with him and then fly home together. My mom's friends are psychos and make her question if her parenting was too soft when we were younger. My response, for the love of God no. Please do not ever follow their examples. My wife's mother my mill. We were passing through the state, as adults, and had the stupid idea to stop by since my wife wanted to see her grandma, who lives there. Mill found out it was going to rain that night while we were driving, so she poisoned me and I ended up hospitalized. Yay. I once got a call from my college roommate's mother saying that she didn't want my girlfriend staying over because it would corrupt him. I disregarded her request. One of my best friends. We're both only children and have grown up together. Luckily my parents started to be a little more lax. For example, people are often surprised I'm an only child by the way I act. We're both in college now, and she has to text her mother every time she leaves her dorm. B. Walks to class. C. Gets into her classroom. D. Leaves her class. E. Makes it back home. She is also discouraged from going anywhere that's not class or her apartment. I wish I was kidding. I also went on vacation with her and her mom once last year and her mom literally positioned her body for every single picture. I was at some event taking place before a baseball game. Among other things, I had to take photos of the event to show sponsors all the people attending and all the kids having fun. As I was snapping pics, some woman grabbed me. "What are you doing? What are you doing?" "He's taking pictures of my son." "Who's in charge here?" I pointed to my shirt. "I'm in charge here, lady. I have to take photos for the sponsors." Woman. Oh. I remember this one private that showed up to his first duty station with his mother in tow. She came along to help get him settled and make sure everything went smoothly and ensure his sergeants were nice to him. I remember first formation she was behind him in the parking lot telling him to stand up straight, etc. Wanted to speak with someone about diet and sleeping schedule. So kid gets assigned to my squad and first sergeant tells me to deal with it. Long story short, I smoked the crap out of that kid. Like absolutely wrecked him, making his mom watch the whole time. She's crying and threatening me, "Just you wait until so and so finds out what you did." I'm friends with random name drop. I kept telling her I'll stop scuffing up Junior as soon as you leave and never come back. She apparently sold her house and purchased one near the base expecting Junior to come live with her. Application for off-post housing denied. We never banned mom from coming on post, but there was a standing order that if anyone in the platoon saw Junior's mom I would smoke the crap out of him. Finally she got it into her head that she was fricking up her kid's life and moved back home. I can't even imagine what that kid's life would have been like if he'd gone to college first. Where would he be if he hadn't had a caring and compassionate and such as myself? Muslim girl at work. Father would follow her in his car to work, then same after she finished. So allowed her independence to drive, but only if he was directly behind her in his car. Went to school for animation and one kid in my school was absolutely obnoxious. His parent apparently homeschooled him and groomed him to be master animator. One of our earliest assignments was to animate a bouncing ball and the professor gave him a B saying how he drew a bowling ball but it bounced like a tennis ball. The next day the kid came with his parents and uncle who was a physicist to prove to the professor that the bowling ball would bounce the way it did when dropped from the height his beloved nephew dropped it from and demanded that they gave him an A. After they left, the professor grabbed the student and yelled at him saying if his ridiculous family members ever stepped foot in his classroom again, he would fail and kick him out of the department. Finally, someone doing something about this madness. I posted the following on a similar topic about 2 years ago. My parents were pretty bat crap crazy about parenting. As I got older, they got more and more crazy. Wouldn't let me move out to go to uni at 18, so I ended up living at home. They wouldn't let me date, would have crazy arguments and occasionally get physical with me if they discovered I had spoken to a boy, limited my time on the internet, confiscated my phone even after I was an adult and paying for it myself. Last year I left home and they called the police reporting me missing and wasted a lot of police time. Then turned up at my BFF's house 4 hours away where I was staying. We had to call the police who escorted away somewhere safer. They constantly hounded me with calls and texts. I went to see them 2 months later and they locked me into my old bedroom and my BF had to call the police again so I could leave without them hurting me. I went back in February to collect clothes and some belongings and had to have police escort me there. Glad I did, because they decided to have a huge family gathering and wanted to ambush me when I got there. I saw them once since then in June when they came to see me. Didn't let them know where I lived and met them for half an hour in the park and crap got serious so I left again. They threatened to beat up my boyfriend. Since then, it's gotten worse in some ways, so I limit contact as much as possible. I only even bother because of my little sister. When I got to my first operational squadron, there was another pilot I would regularly go on midday training familiarization flights with. Every time we would fly to his neighborhood and do a couple circles around his house to check on the kids. If they came outside we would hover briefly and wave back. This is the only correct way to be a helicopter parent. I lived at college 100 miles away from home and one week I moved dorm rooms from the upstairs to the basement. That night, my mom texted me asking if I was okay. I said yes and went to sleep. The next morning a bunch of police officers were in my dorm room looking for me. Apparently she tracked my phone every night to make sure I got home safely, and the GPS tracker on my phone didn't work in the basement of the dorm building, so it said I was in the middle of a warehouse on the other side of town. She told me she thought a kidnapper might have texted her back and didn't trust me saying I was okay. She saw her reaction as normal, and that describes our relationship in many ways. This guy my sister dated in high school. He was an a-hole. His mom, horrible woman to begin with, tried to meddle in their dating love life in 9th grade. Like called my sister and would say, he's going to take you to the movies. He'll buy you popcorn and a soda. Don't ask for anything else. He's going to try kiss you after. Take a toothbrush so you didn't have popcorn in your mouth. He can feel you up but nothing more. Next week you guys are coming over my house to watch a movie. You can have any sex but vaginal. Don't worry, he'll be in the next room, so if he wants more, let me know. I've already told him I want him to make his losing his virginity special. And his junior year, I've already talked to the cheerleading coach and she is going to be picking out a special one of her girls. My sister was like, you're freaking crazy, frick you. I'll do what I want when I want. But all his girlfriends got the same treatment, and they all had to give in to mommy. Mom had a key to his apartment when he moved out and would drop by. She would walk in during sex and his GFS were expected to not mind or sometimes just ignore her coming in and collecting his laundry. She picked his clothes. She picked his apartment, his stuff for apartment. When he underperformed at work, teacher and coach, mommy came in and yelled at the principal. They apologized. She interfered with a cop giving him a ticket. She made a break up with a fiance because fiance couldn't babysit one night. He dated a lot of broken girls. His dad was on the school district board in a corrupt city. Whole family had money, mostly stolen. There is about 30 other stories I could tell on top these. I need more stories. This is too much. How in the heck was he okay with having his sex life micromanaged? I worked in retail management for 6 years, and I once interviewed a young man whose mother came to the job interview with him. It was quite a few minutes before I could get her away from the interview table to proceed with the questions. She kept stressing to me that this was his first job interview ever. In the middle of the interview, I felt like we were being watched. I looked up to see the mom, not very well hidden behind an appliance display, taking pictures of us. She waved at me when she saw me looking. Despite having a crazy mother, the kid was actually very likable, so I hired him. He stayed with us for about a year and was pretty great, but every time I needed to call him to talk to him about scheduling or whatnot, the mom would answer his phone. She was also an almost daily customer in the store. He was a good kid, and spend probably half of our interactions apologizing for his mother. I don't know whatever happened to him, but I hope he eventually got out from under her apron. I had a friend whose mom wouldn't let him sleep over at friends' houses because she was afraid he would scratch himself on the zipper of a sleeping bag. This mom at the park holding her toddler on a leash with only a few inches of leash between her toddler and her hand. Little girl was trying to play in the sand with another child, and if she so much as reached for the other child's shovel, she was yanked back. It was essentially the same as pulling on her shirt to stop her from moving away. It made me sad to think about this child not having any freedom to explore and her every move halted before she even did anything wrong. I'm not a fan of leashes in general, though I recognize they have their time and place if your kid is a bolter, like airports, Disney, etc. But this particular use of the leash was pretty unnecessarily restrictive. A student's younger brother had a cleft lip as a baby. It wasn't severe and didn't involve his palate. One surgery and it was repaired. But the mother would not let the child walk. He was 3 years old and still strapped to her back in one of those baby slings. Her reasoning was that if he fell he'd hurt his lip. My first year of college. I'm only in my second, but still. I had a roommate in a 4-person on-campus apartment who, when time came to register for apartments the next year, didn't realize it was first come first serve and didn't read any emails about the actual time the offices opened. Needless to say, he registered 3 days after registration began and was waitlisted and given a dorm in the meantime because it was all that was left. At this, he was outraged. He was a National Merit Scholar. He had a National Merit Scholarship. He deserved an apartment. He was also pissed at me for a couple days for not waking him up or letting him know, but I kept my distance from him because he was creepy and I'm not his mom, so I never bothered to make sure he was being an adult. So he called his mom to be at the housing department until he got one. It apparently took several calls and I'm pretty sure housing gave in solely because they were tired of hearing about it. They moved him to the top of the wait list and he got an apartment for this year. My absolute favorite part is that he directly addressed this aspect of his character in a monologue to me. He said he's not like some people who have helicopter moms, and instead she was more like an AC-130, not hovering right above him but still hanging around close enough that he can call an airstrike in when needs to. If that isn't the definition of helicopter parenting, then I don't know what is. I have a younger cousin who at 15 had still never been allowed to take a sex ed class, go to a high school dance, eat school lunch, have friends over, go to a friend's house, or take part in after school activities. For example, the stepmother, not my real aunt. I refuse to acknowledge her as family even. Heard my cousin watching The Big Bang Theory. Some character says the word procreated and the sod flies off the handle about what a filthy show it is. Cousin started dating a guy against her stepmom's wishes, and due to literally not understanding how sex works, got pregnant and is going to have a baby. My cousin is mentally maybe 11 or 12, still watches Barbie movies, wears princess dresses, and is having a child. Literally helicoptered over until it absolutely backfired. I am a parent in the Bay Area and being around helicopter parenting is my life. My kid is really independent and we have a rule on the playground that if he needs help doing something he shouldn't be doing it. He's been going down the slide alone since he could walk, and the constant glares I get are unreal. Had one parent whose 4-5-year-old child needed her to actually go down the slide with them. She watched my son go down alone and from the top of the slide started shouting to the playground, WHO is with him? Is he okay? He is unattended. You know you're next level helicoptering when you're trying to helicopter other kids. My sister-in-law. Her daughter is 9 years old and she still dresses her in the cute ruffled outfits you would normally see on a 5-year-old. She gets them specially made since none of the brands offer them in her daughter's size. She is never allowed to have any time alone. Her mother has never even let her spend the night at her grandmother's house unless she was also there in case of an emergency, even though the grandmother is a registered nurse and often has all of her other 7 grandchildren staying with her on some weekends. I think this counts. There's a lake near me where people take their dogs to swim and play. A new woman showed up one day and her dog ran off splashing into the water with the other pooches. Then she seemed to realize that swimming in the water meant ingesting the water for a dog, which point she began screaming. Non. She was French. That's dirty water, chérie. It's a crystal clear mountain lake. Come. Says. Drink this. This being an actual bottle of water she'd brought. She was frantically calling the dog out of the lake to get him to drink her bottled water, genuinely freaking the frick out that her dog was drinking lake. Like, you know, a dog. There were a bunch of us there and we all just stood there speechless and totally riveted, watching the crazy, screaming woman running after this dog with her bottle of Evian. Never seen anything like it in my life. On the other hand, I'm so glad I got to see that. It's pretty high on my list of craziest crap I've ever seen. Took my son to the playground and there was a mother actually squatting inside a tiny plastic playhouse, monitoring her 5-year-old. He looked absolutely mortified. My brother-in-law is terrible. My husband and I have 3 dogs. I grew up with large breed dogs. He only had one his entire life. A little dog. Whenever they come over we have to keep our dogs outside because my nephew is afraid of them. I always try to get him to come to the window and say hi to them but he always runs off crying. One time he actually wanted to say hello to one of the dogs, then I heard my brother-in-law say to his 4-year-old son, "No, buddy, remember? You're afraid of dogs." Then the boy ran away. I almost lost it, but you know what? He's not my kid so it's not my place. I tutored elementary school kids for a short time and this mother tracked her daughter's bowel movements and still wiped her butt. My mom's student. His mom would only let him come to school for an hour every day because the lights in the classroom gave him migraines. My mom asked him about his migraines and he said his head hurt because his mom took him to the Taylor Swift concert the night before. Had a relative diagnose him with so many mental disorders that he didn't have. This is illegal to do, so she could get money from the state for her disabled child. He was so drugged up, not allowed to wear cotton clothing. Why frick knows. Emailed my mom at least 10 times per day and was annoyed when she wouldn't answer. She was teaching. Blamed my mom for making her son depressed because she gave him 10 math problems every night. The rest of the class got 20. My mom gave him half to pacify crazy B. He didn't even do the math problems. Yes, we called CPS on her many times. The University of Minnesota subreddit had a helicopter mom posing as a prospective student trying to find out which dorms were the most boring and least prone to partying. She was getting advice until her child posted on the sub, pleaded people to stop responding to her messages because the mom was using that info to try and influence the child's decision. A girl I went to school with's older sister got pregnant in high school. This made her father turn into a batshit crazy helicopter parent. She didn't notice at first because her sister was much older than her, but as soon as she hit puberty and started growing breasts, he literally wouldn't let her out of his sight. Like he changed jobs so he'd be able to drop her off and pick her up from school. He didn't trust her to catch the bus. He bought an alarm system that he wouldn't tell her the code to. When he absolutely had to leave her at home, he turned the system onto the option for protecting you while you're home. Basically, opening a door or window set it off, but the motion sensors weren't on so she could still move around the house. But she couldn't leave. After much begging, he finally let her go to school sporting events, where she had to sit by him the entire time. She asked to go to the bathroom once and took longer than a few minutes. He came and got her and dragged her away from talking to her female friends. I know all of this because a friend of mine dated her. They had sex in the school bathrooms and behind her house during the rare occasions that her father trusted her to stay home with her mom. However, her father did succeed in his mission of his second daughter not getting pregnant young, but he also succeeded in making his daughter write him completely out of her life. She left home the second she graduated high school and never returned a call from him or came back to visit. She's happy now in a new city living her life how she wants and even goes to visit her other sister who also wrote their father off for his treatment of her. At most med schools, second-year students are paired with first-year students to serve as mentors. Pairing is usually based on surveys. That is, what do you do for fun, relationship status, interests, etc. During my second year I was responsible for coordinating the pairing of students. After pairing had been released, the dean I was working under got a call from the distressed mother of an incoming first-year student complaining about the match her son had received. She felt that the second-year student he had been paired with was not the best fit and basically demanded to have the pair switched. It goes beyond that though. Spending time in the dean's office, it became clear that it was very common for parents to call about their kids aka 2230yo, adult, concerns, issues with grades, ask for special allowances etc. TL, DR, grown boss med students whine to family, helicopter parents get angry and call the deans. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.